right, welcome back to another lovely episode of Goddamn Liberals. Will is with me today.
Yep.
And I was talking with some local friends of mine this week, and they brought this up before, but the difference in the 50 states, and I don't think we have more details about the territories. I guess you can focus on the 50 states, but how the differences in taxation and income and all that goes into a pot, for federal taxes is mostly the focus here. And then from that total federal pot of money, how much does each state then pull out, for their services or, political leanings and so forth. So, Will, you found a really good, lengthy, it's about 44 pages here, that the Rockefeller Institute of Government found, entitled Giving or Getting, New York's Balance of Payments with the Federal Government, a 2019 report. So what were some of the topics that jumped out to you there?
Yeah, so of course there's the very surface level. What's interesting is that different states give and get different amounts of money to and from the federal government per person in the state. So you look at a state like New York, where I believe they give. Let me see. New York gives, on average, every citizen in New York gives the federal government about $13,000 a year, and then in return, the federal government only spends about $11,000 per year in the state. So about for each resident, they're essentially just giving $2,000 a year to the federal government that goes to other states. And then on the extreme other end of this, you have Virginia, which each resident pays about $10,500 a year, but each resident, or just averaged over the whole state, each resident gets about $21,000 spent on them. And this spending is broken up into a lot of different categories that we'll go into, but in general, it's interesting that you have these really big disparities. So it's like the common framing of this is that there are giver states and there are taker states. I think that's a little. I think it's a little simplified. I think it's a lot more interesting when you go deeper into it. It's interesting that this disparity exists, but I think the reasons why it exists are interesting. I think the rhetoric around it is also kind of revealing.
Yeah, that's interesting. So in Virginia, you said that was on the other end of the spectrum mostly, that about around $10,000 a year paid in taxes. And these are looking at individual tax income, or did they even go into what corporations pay at all?
Oh, yes, they do break it down. So let's see, it's for Virginia, let's see, where's the, yeah, they do have the chart in here. Need to find the, actually I don't know if they have the broken down version for receipts, but in general, receipts are broken into individual income taxes, which is usually about half of what the government gets from a state. Payroll taxes is about a quarter, and then the rest is some combination of excise and corporate taxes. Yeah, I don't have the numbers for that, for what the federal government gets from Virginia broken down in that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm looking at the chart here, and I'll try to put this in a link, with the post that we put out. The other thing that came up, I guess, with the 2017 tax law changes, these northeastern, quote, blue states, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, these states, not only just for the federal taxes, but their state taxes are pretty high in these areas. When you look at their property taxes. And so up until 2017, when the tax law was changed, these states were able to kind of counterbalance, looking at an individual taxpayer with a SALT, or state and local tax deduction on their federal taxes. But with the 2017 tax plan, that was capped out at $10,000 per person. So did that happen to also play into the large bottom line figure for these individuals in these states?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know about that change until you mentioned.
Gotcha.
But what I
So
did
this one's really just looked at. No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I didn't know about the effect that you that you just mentioned, until you said it. But what I did notice was that states with higher marginal income tax rates, especially on the higher, for higher levels of income, those states tended to need less money for things like federal aid because they have better social safety net programs. It's not like not having taxes reduces the necessity to have social safety net programs. It just means that Kentucky is taking more from the federal government instead of taking it from its own coffers.
Gotcha. Yeah, going back to, I remember having some friends and acquaintances up in the blue states up north. Some of the localities up there were allowing some of the residents to prepay taxes, because I believe it was tax year 2016 that these individuals were able to take advantage of the full deduction on their federal taxes because it was pretty high. But I remember at the end of that tax year, a lot of the localities looked ahead and said, hey, this is going to change next year, so maybe we break this up, maybe you do some prepayment of taxes this year to at least give you a little bit of benefit before the tax law changes come next year and that $10,000 max hits there. That's another interesting angle. And the rhetoric, the political side of it, I just go back. It's interesting that it does not seem to be present mind. So when you look at the Senate runoff here in Georgia, I don't hear a lot of advertising really complaining about the typical Republican line that you got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. You've got to there's no need for public welfare and so on. I don't really hear a lot of that this time. I think the only one, there's a mention of illegal immigrants voting, but that's not really anything close to some of the other arguments that I've heard come from that side of allegedly illegal immigrants getting welfare or public assistance and stuff like that. So it's interesting that has been a long time, Republican tagline for years. That we can pay all this money for the national defense and the military, but we need to cut these public assistance programs or Medicare or Medicaid.
Yeah, it's weird because those are usually the states that most rely on them. I believe it's what is it? Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, New Mexico. Those states all super heavily rely on these government assistance programs. So it is very strange to me that Republicans being so adamant about cutting them when they're the states that most need them, and also they're the states that are most asking for them. So it's so they sort of have this public rhetoric about we need to cut these programs because austerity and balancing the budget, but then not publicly, they're the ones that are seeking these sorts of grants.
Did it happen to have any detail along the lines of tax credits for businesses and corporations? So allegedly creating X number of jobs, but you get this huge tax credit to do that. Would that come up possibly?
Oh, I have not looked at those numbers. I do not.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So what are some of the other trends that you happen to have found in the this long report here?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm still wrapping my head around is there's a really big difference in the amount of federal contracts you get based on what state you're in. And this isn't just the raw numbers, but this is per state resident. You have Virginia, where for every resident in Virginia, the state of Virginia gets $9,000 in contracts per year, and then you look at New York, which only gets $700. That's like literally more than 10 times more money per person in the state that Virginia gets for contracts than New York. And then I believe, Kentucky is also up there. It's not near as high as Virginia. It's only like $4,500 per resident, but it's still much higher than the national average of $1,500. And this is like a lot of these are where a corporation like Boeing or Humana, they're either headquartered in a state or they do a lot of business in a state, and they're the ones that get the contracts. And then it's also interesting that there's this correlation, of course, where you have Kentucky is where Humana does a lot of work, and they get these massive government grants just constantly for running TRICARE. And then, of course, Mitch McConnell being the Senate Majority Leader. There's I haven't looked into the grants, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's some sort of link here.
Yeah, interesting. So we've got TRICARE military. The other thing about Virginia, everything that I know about it, it's it wraps around D.C. So you've got the border, around D.C. and Virginia. You have a lot of spread out areas. I remember doing a training session once for a government entity out in west of D.C. It was in Leesburg, Virginia. So there is this huge presence and a huge influx of money that comes in from these government-related contracts. Now, geographically, is it because everybody just gravitates towards D.C. and Virginia if they want to get federal money? Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But
it's also just more efficient to have everything centrally located like that. Because D.C. is sort of this, it's the center of the massive sprawl along the East Coast. It's just that's where a lot of people are, and that's it just makes it a lot easier to coordinate that. So that means that just because Virginia, Maryland, and so on are right next to there, they get first pickings.
So how do we fix this? It's almost like being an American and getting your tax dollars your best bet. Some people, and there's been a lot of bragging on the parts of especially Florida Republicans that folks are leaving these blue states up north to go to Florida where there's no state income tax, just to do that. And specifically, where was Florida in the list?
Florida is about in the middle of the list. They do get more from the federal government than they give the federal government. The difference is about 2,000. Oh wait, no, it's let's see, is this? Yeah, there's about 2,000 per person per year more that they get than they give. But that's just about average as far as states go. There wasn't. They weren't considered a particularly notable state, so I don't have their data broken down.
Gotcha. But these folks that are looking to leave areas of high taxation to move to areas where there's low taxation. I don't know how. It's the tax code is so difficult and so complex. I don't know how you fix this. It's just a mess that's been created of how many years of back and forth between the political parties for decades.
Yeah, because it is it is notable that it's not all swing states, but a lot of swing states tend to have more of these government contracts, but then also states with politicians who tend to be high-ranking. So like if you're like Senate Majority Leader or something, or even Minority Leader, and also same goes for the House. Those states tend to have like more federal contracts, but it's not clear whether that's my guess is that it's not a causal thing, but rather it's a self-reinforcing thing, where if you're high-ranking in the Senate or in the House, you're just going to have more say, and you're going to have more political pull to get federal contracts for your state. And then if someone's up and coming in that state, they're more likely to have more say just because they're from a state that has a lot of federal contracts. So it's not it's this self-reinforcing system, and I agree with you. It's really hard to think of a way like how you compensate for that, because it's it's interesting, and I'm not sure if it's not fair, but it doesn't feel healthy that there's certain states that are kind of just overlooked by the federal government, and others that it pays a lot more attention to.
Yeah, certainly. So some other, growing up in Georgia through all the years, and down in Southwest Georgia, there is a Marine base that I've actually has had ties to my family over the years here and there. And this base, I remember a long time back, if I'm not mistaken, it was during Bill Clinton's presidency. There was a theme that they wanted to cut and downsize a number of the military bases. This was after the Cold War, but yet you had this, there's a mentality with military spending that if you don't spend it, you're going to lose it the next year. So there's almost this inherent constant flow of trying to either find some military contractors to spend this money because nobody wants to lose the money the next year. So it takes, in a lot of cases, some unpopular thoughts, because in some of these areas, these military bases are about the only thing that's around. It's a huge income, for that area. The economic benefits are just huge around these military bases and spending. But on the other hand, when I've always looked at the whole bigger picture, if you have politicians saying that they want to cut government services, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, for all that, why are we trying to divert more money to our military when there's not a world war? If there were to be a world war coming up, the spending would increase anyway. It doesn't seem to make sense to spend more money on defense than for, just for, helping out your fellow neighbors.
Yeah, it's does it make sense to for your first priority to be protect something from external threats rather than actually making sure the thing that you're protecting is healthy and there? If your people are poor and impoverished and unhappy, how what does it say about you that you're ready to hold the knife to someone else's throat and you're not willing to make sure that your citizens have bread on the table? That's a mentality that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and for a Republican Party that tries to be the Christian or the religious Republican Party, that's not a very religious way of looking at these things, of not helping people, if especially if they've lost their job, through no fault of their own. It just, the hypocrisy that continues from that party is,
because these red and southern states are there's all this rhetoric that you brought up before about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, or just the sort of why should I care that my neighbor lost their job because of COVID, or why should I care that they got gypped by a hospital now owe $100,000 for being in the hospital for a night. like the red and southern states are the ones taking advantage of the after effects, they're taking advantage of these federal programs that like are really more necessary because of those things. Like if you didn't have people just like immediately being put into poverty because of hospital bills, or if you didn't have like, I think it was there's some states with 20% of people in the state are on SNAP. Like if you didn't have that, you wouldn't see this big disparity in like federal spending. But like it's there's something systemic about these states that puts people in poverty and makes it really hard for people to get out.
Mm-hmm. Especially from a party that has no interest in raising the minimum wage either. Mm-hmm. I don't know how anybody can live. Was it $7.25 an hour in the federal? I don't know how anybody can live on that. And you even have these private, employers like Amazon. I think they set a minimum base floor salary of $15 an hour, which is almost double, more than double what the federal minimum wage is. But yet you've got this, huge pressure from this, from the Republican Party, and likely coming from their donors, to not increase that. It just is mind-boggling.
Yep.
So I don't know. I don't know that we really have a way of fixing this. It's just trying to bring it to light, because I know that we were talking about this amongst my friends over the years there. Any ideas that you thought of, though?
Just all of them feel like my initial ideas just all feel very things that we should do anyway. So it's like, okay, well, percent of, was it? I think it was people in Kentucky are on SNAP. I'll find the states later, but there's several states where it's like literally 1 in 5 residents are using federal assistance just to put food on the table. Like this can't be, and not every state is this way. It doesn't have to be like that. It's got to be some combination of, as you said, minimum wage. It's got to be education, even just, the supreme dirty word of, universal basic income. If you just had that, then, we're essentially doing UBI with more steps. If you're, if someone who doesn't make any money is just getting money for food, that's, there's not really a huge difference. It's just that it's a lot harder to coordinate. Like, okay, you have to apply for SNAP, you have to be evaluated for it. There's I think it's a special card that you get to pay for things with, whereas if you just gave people the money, the impact is it's so much better and it's so much cheaper to do. But that also feels like kind of a different topic. It's more, I think the disparity by state is just sort of it's kind of an outgrowth of the individual politics of states and how those produce different types of economic inequality.
Yeah. So we'll have to see where our new president takes this direction. We got a Democratic House, and the Senate race here in Georgia will determine how the Senate plays along or doesn't play along for the next 4 years. And we'll have to see what happens with all this.
Oh yeah, because just what is it, $600 they're cutting the check for everyone?
Is it going to happen?
Oh no, but is that the current deal on the table, $600 per person?
I think that's the latest that I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's just far too little. Sure, you could say, oh, too little, too late, but really just anything will help. But 600 is a pittance compared to like what other developed nations are doing. Like we should just be embarrassed by how little we care about like people that have been hurt by just the economic changes from COVID.
Yeah. It is what it is. Well, anything else on the topic you can think of for this episode?
No, I guess I just found a lot of there's a couple interesting sites. But yeah, we'll post them in the video link. Like datausa.io has really cool like state by state comparisons. Like it has a ton of like economic, social data on every state, politics, diversity, education, and you can even compare them. And I use that site for a lot of data to prepare for this call.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll put all the links out there and all the additional info.
Yep.
Well, I guess the other plug, and I did a solo episode this week to kind of describe a little bit more about Peach News Now and goddamn liberals. And so you're welcome to go back and refer to that. But some goals of mine, for the podcast and everything was to possibly get it published out on Apple Podcasts. So there are some services out there that I've looked at versus just publishing on YouTube. But if anybody likes what we're doing, also putting out the invitation to comment on this episode, wherever you happen to find it. Or also we have an email address, peachnewsnow@gmail.com, and we watch that, and we can bring up topics and talk about this in future episodes for sure. But maybe all for now. Any other closing comments you got by chance?
Oh, nope. That's all I've got. This is a really it's a really cool topic, and I think these are really hard systemic problems. I wish I had more coherent ideas on exactly like how to fix these problems.
Yep. Well, we'll leave that to our fearless leaders and either call them out for it or support them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, have a good rest of the weekend, and we'll get back here soon with our next episode.